Hey, we're here back at the 40 Black and Dad show with my co-host Tony Ragg, and guest dad for the day is a friend of mine, longtime friend, went to grad school with, Jay New, coming to us live, live from Tennessee.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having
Welcome to
me.
the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you here, and we'll be talking about your dad journey and as a thematic through line, the idea of keepsakes. What do we want to leave our kids that are like physical objects from our lives? But kicking it off, Tony, how you been?
Good. As I was telling you guys before the podcast, so my son, he's 3. He's out of daycare for the summer for the next 3 weeks or so. So today is his second day home of summer, and I've already want to put him back into school. So 3-year-olds are a handful. They say terrible twos, but that terribleness definitely extends to 3 and beyond. And I definitely want to ask Jay, who has a 3-year-old, how long does it last? Because man, I have like a splitting headache right now. I probably can't. You probably can't tell. It's bad.
Yeah, man. Yeah, my kids are 3 and 7. My 3-year-old's almost 4, will be 4 in August. And yeah, the terrible twos did not exist for us with either kid. 2 was great. They're really cute. They're little enough that my expectations were really low. And and they can say words, but they don't make a lot of sense. But at
Mhm,
3, for some reason, they start kind of making sense. And
mhm.
it's really hard for me to, when somebody sounds like an adult. I mean, not that they sound like an adult, but when they sound like they
Right, they're
understand.
like making sentences and
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're
it's
taking
it's
in
like,
what you're saying for the first time.
right. It's so difficult to not start raising those expectations in a way that's not
Mhm.
fair, and then just frustrates them, which in turn
Yeah,
frustrates me and Andrea and stuff. And that's one of the biggest and most difficult lessons that I still have to learn all the time to like
that
give
is
them time
cra-
to process.
that's truly crazy for me. I think it's a recurring thing for kids of being older, looking older, hitting puberty sooner even, or
Mm,
to me, I was a big kid. So I was treated like a kid my
mm,
size, not
right.
like a kid my age a lot of times.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's like, man, important lesson to share and want to like really take in. Even as my kid who's just past 6 months, she's so physical. Sometimes I'm like, yo, yeah, but no, she's not. She may be stronger or have a better support or whatever core for a baby, but she's not an 8 month old. She's not a 9 month old yet.
Right.
Even that short jump is like a big difference in treatment.
Yeah, I think that could be a real thing for her. Even just that video you sent of her crawling around, I think when she was like 6. I mean, she was, I think, weeks old or
Yeah,
6.
that was like
I forget how old she was,
in
but
like yeah, that was like 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, and
Wow.
yeah, I
she was
couldn't believe it.
she was climbing me.
Yeah.
It was
Like
it
over
was
These
your
crazy.
leg, like crawled over your leg.
these
Yeah,
post-COVID babies are coming out with superpowers. I'm telling you. Like,
Yeah, it was wild. Um, but man, Tony, the thing you're saying about the summer care stuff, man, that's that's so real. Last summer, 2 weeks before summer started, my daughter's daycare said that they weren't going to continue with that age group. Well, LA daycare in LA is difficult enough, and for some reason out here in Tennessee, it's an even more high demand with less supply. And
oh
so
wow.
it's the one thing, like cost of living, when we moved here, everything went down except for daycare, which went up.
Hmm.
And um, because of availability. And so 2 weeks before the summer starts, all of a sudden we have nothing for her all summer long. And everybody else is full. And I was looking at my very first summer off. So I'm a teacher,
Mm.
and but most summers I would teach like summer programs or something, and or I'd do some freelance, film and TV work, stuff like that.
Hmm.
hmm
But for the last summer, I was so excited to take like 2 months off and just have this semi-retirement. And then it turned into daddy daycare
Daddy
also.
daycare. Yep, exactly. That's Daddy
And
daycare. Sure.
and I loved it, man. It was great. I mean, we had so much fun and all that, but you know, as you know, parenting is work still, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was relaxing.
And you said that was the 3-year-old that was off.
That was my daughter who's older.
Okay.
She's
Oh, the older
7
one.
now. Yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
as far as the 3-year-old, yeah, man, he has for both of our kids. 3 years old was by far the hardest challenge so far.
Mhm.
And the parents who are older and have kids that are older than us, you know, terrify us about middle school years and teenage years. But so we'll see how that goes.
It's like a PTSD. You only remember the most recent time that they were bad. So it's like, yeah, they were
Yeah,
really bad as teenagers. Oh yeah, I get it. But it's funny you
right.
had said, you know, your son starts to make sense, but he also starts to make demands. Like my son is just
Yeah.
demanding everything and anything he can, and it's just like he understands enough to know exactly what not to do when we tell him something like, "Don't touch the stove." Touch the stove. Like, so
Right.
it's very funny that kind of that defiance, but also that independence that he's going through right now. So you have to kind of have that balancing act of, okay, how much string do you give him and where do you pull it back from a safety standpoint? And we're learning that, you know, day by day. That's parenting. Is it's a daily journey. You wake up like, okay, what's gonna happen today? You, just, you know, throw on all your
Yeah.
capes and let it ride.
Well, and just what you're saying about it's so strange going back to this kind of expectations thing. They can be so sophisticated in the way that they'll test you and test your boundaries and because you know they're not thinking about it that way. They have a
Mhm.
thing they want to do, and so they try to do it, and they're smart enough to figure out ways to do it that you may or may not want them to you know participate in.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you know, I'll say, you know, Miles, come here because I need to put on his shoes or something. Like, Miles, pick up your shoes and come here. Miles, pick up your shoes and come over here. And because he's in the middle of some thought, it just takes him 5, 6, 7 seconds to kind of finish that thought, process what he just heard, process how he's going to respond to it, and then to start doing it.
Sure.
And as a 40-year-old, that's a lot of seconds for me to start getting really frustrated.
Yeah.
It's unfair to him, but it's, you know, I,
Well, yeah,
I have two, yeah, I have two kids
you've
that
been living this but you've been living this long and you're used to dealing with people your age as
right,
you age, and
Yeah.
right,
people respond. You say something and
right,
people do it. So it's hard to say this is a new
yeah,
being in a
right,
new phase. And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, his development is still, he's not an adult. He's just not a teenager
right.
yet. And it's
It's
hard to, I can
very,
understand that.
yeah, yeah. It's very, very frustrating the separation between my brain and my emotions.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, because my emotions are they're still what they've always been. And as far as my emotions go, I mean, I'm a child raising children. Um, and so you really have to make those efforts to process all that and be so intentional about creating behaviors that are better for everybody. It's
Well,
exhausting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And 100% as people age, they revert back to that. Because I talked to Tony before. We're living with in-laws, but they're older parents, so
Mm,
it'd be like, don't put that there. Wait, don't.
yeah. Yeah.
There's a 3 second delay if you're too young or too old, depending.
Yeah.
That's
So you have 2 kids, which we've established. What was it like introducing? Well, first, what's a 7-year-old? How is she soon to be 7? How is she in comparison to where she was at 3? Since we kind of talked about this subject.
Right. So we were just learning this that there are there you know, you think about like puberty is the big emotional change and physical change and all that kind of stuff, and it certainly is one of the big physical change periods. But there's this 6 to 8 year old typically, you know, it may be younger or older for other kids, but generally in that 6 to 8 year old range there's another like big step forward with hormones and things that start happening.
Sure.
Apparently I'm not a doctor or anything, And so it goes back to, man, we just have to be so on top of all the basics. The same stuff that would make a baby cry or any of us like frustrated without us realizing why we're frustrated, in terms of keeping bedtime at bedtime, making sure she eats enough, making sure she has enough water, enough sunlight, enough, playing outside and all that kind of stuff, and physical
Right.
activity. And I think a lot of us as adults, we learn how to ignore some of those things to the point that then we're just in bad moods. We don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
But with a 6 to 8 year old, and maybe with, kids of any age, that's exacerbated by by such a higher degree.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, so then their frustration level will really increase, which increases ours. And sometimes it has to get to a point where it just seems like they're having a complete breakdown before Andrea and I, either one of us, can remember, oh, right, right. This is not like, even though they seem and sound like a sane, like
Intelligent,
intelligent human
reasonable.
being,
Yeah.
right? They've only been speaking any language for like 3 years. So,
Yeah.
and it's so hard to come back to like, right. They're not really in control. And so somebody here has got to be the adult in the room. And, sometimes I forget that that's me. And so then it's like, okay, you know what? Drink this glass of milk.
Yeah.
You have to drink it.
Warm
It's
glass of
not a
milk. Yeah.
choice. You have to drink this. And then, you have to lay down and read this book, or, whatever it is. Or,
Oh, I thought that was a calming tactic. Get a glass of milk. Hey.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But it depends on what the situation is.
Sure.
If it's 11 in the morning, then it's like, all right, look, we're gonna go on a walk. Like, let's go on a walk or go on a run, or something.
Yeah.
And just remembering that stuff. It's so easy to forget it when you're also just trying to take care of all your own things. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not a model dad. And I'll say with the 7-year-old,
Why?
um,
Why not? I think this comes up quite a bit generally as a parent. But I got to jump in. You're like, I'm not a model dad.
I just think I'm really average. Um, my kids
Okay,
think
but
I'm
what is
great
that
most of the
standard?
time, but
What is that standard?
I think that standard is against my own. Um, I think it's a mix of what I think I could be doing as a dad.
Mm,
Um, if Yeah, I think there are changes I could make to probably be a better dad. And of course, um, it would mean changing some priorities at different times. I think we all give a little too much to our job,
Mm.
or we want to relax a little too much at times. Those kind of things.
yeah.
Um,
I wonder if, there's a bit of that kind of perfectionism that runs through our brains of being, being everything at all times in a way.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Because I bet you're probably not just an average dad, probably
Yeah.
well above average dad, but the kids have to have a life. And in that life, our parents that work, and in that life, you know what I mean, is
yeah,
flooding in the house that happens, or you know,
yeah,
the
And
yeah,
the squirrel they see every morning doesn't come, it's dead. It's like these are
oh
things
no.
that happen in life, and good or bad, they're things that they have to learn to handle. But
yeah,
I know, knowing you, and you know, for quite a while, I know it's not like you're I'm going away for the weekend
Mm-hmm.
or the week, or I'm about to go gamble for a couple weeks and I'll be back. It's just like,
yeah,
maybe you're a little short with them, maybe you stay at work long.
yeah. I mean,
So
I
if
think I
you
meet
look at it
expectation.
from just like dad in the scope of the timeline of history, like, this is probably, I mean, I've talked about this before, like, this is probably
Yeah, for
the
sure.
first time where dads are able to be more hands-on and more, like you had mentioned, like you were able to spend the summer with your
Mm,
daughter, doing that. Like, I bet you that, at that age, that's something that she's going to remember for a long time, regardless of what you guys did or didn't do. I think those are the moments that the kids remember more than things that we think that they remember more. And I think that's something that I was talking
Yeah.
to another dad friend of mine is like, as parents, and like you had kind of articulated earlier, we think of all these things that we think the kids are thinking, or that we think they should be thinking, or we fear that they're thinking. And sometimes
Mhm.
they're just not thinking at all. They're just like, we're living in the moment. So yeah, don't be too harsh on yourself. You have two kids that you seem like you have a nice, happy, healthy, a happy family. So I think you're an A+ dad from all of just being your age.
I appreciate that.
You've
Yeah.
been graded and class dismissed.
Yeah, exactly. A plus. That's what you get. Right? So,
Yeah,
but
no, we do. I think we do pretty good. And Andrea is a really great mom. We're very lucky that we both have jobs where we get to just be engaged with our kids a lot. That's something that I was really incredibly lucky with. I think growing up, not just with my parents, but with my grandparents too. Like
Right.
3 out of 4. One of them passed away when I was little, but 3 out of 4 grandparents. I mean, I saw a lot. And so that we have jobs where, and this is part of why, I mean, I was with Aaron for like a month on NBA 2K. I found out that Andrea and I were having our daughter. I landed in Oakland to go up for that job, and I was still on the plane. And she called and she was like, "Hey, look, like I'd much rather tell you this in person, but you're going to be gone for a month. I'm not going to sit on this for a month, but like we're having a baby."
aw.
And and where was I going with that? Oh man. Oh, that was the beginning. I knew in that moment, like, oh, I'm wrapping up these projects, and that's more or less going to be the end of my 6-day weeks and 12 to
Mhm.
16-hour days. And because I was at that point kind of in my career where I think I either really had to turn towards that
Mhm.
or kind of bow out a little bit. Um, and so there were a few projects that year that we finished up with Aaron and my buddies Nate and Gerard, and kind of wrapped those up. And then that's when I started teaching full time. Um, and Andrea gets to work remote most of the time, and so we get to be there a lot, man. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
Really,
that's
really
that's
lucky.
so cool. That's so cool.
I actually wonder if because the world changes as things change. I know that's kind of vague, but the idea that like men in the effort to be better fathers, more present fathers, and now we're in a world where so many people can work from home.
Hmm.
Mm,
Like these two things didn't happen one because of the other directly. It wasn't a purposeful thing, but I don't think it's also a complete coincidence that the world is changing in this way.
yeah, I don't think so.
And I think it's nice now, and I'm very curious to see kind of our kids' generation as they grow up, because we're seeing dads being more hands on, and then families having the
You mean
ability, like
like your
me and
kids?
my wife. What's that?
You mean like your kids
Yeah,
after,
so
like
our
the next
kids, like,
generation?
exactly. So us being able to work from home more, like me and my wife both work from home. So we're both with him a lot more than in previous generations. Like, how is that going to impact them as they grow into being adults? That's gonna be very interesting to see, just having that extra
Well,
nurturing, I think is gonna,
hopefully they figure
hopefully
out.
it's better, but we don't know, because
Well,
then
hopefully
we
they
have
figure out
the,
the 4-day work week and the 30
I
hour.
know.
They're like,
Yeah,
okay,
Well,
we
shoot,
actually don't
we
need to
need them to
work
start
that
figuring out
much.
AI real quick.
right.
Like, 4-day work week is not gonna be the issue. It's AI who they need to figure out. So it's
Yeah.
funny. Like my son, and this is kind of an aside. My son uses our Alexa against us, and so it's so smart, because we set a timer for Alexa anytime we want him to do something. Like, oh, Legend, you have 1 minute until it's time to go to bed. We'll be like,
Right.
set a timer for 1 minute, and he'll be like, Alexa, stop. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay. Oh shoot,
Alexa, add
my
20 minutes to
yeah.
timer.
Wait, my Alexa's going off now. It's funny. 1 second. But yeah, it's so funny. Like, these kids are so like tech savvy so early. Like, he knows how to use his tablet now,
Yeah.
and like, so it's just funny. Like I said, how that the extra nurturing with parents is gonna be, plus the installation of social media and all these different technologies. Like, I'm very curious. Like, I feel like as parents, we're trying to impart so many like
Well,
principles early,
it's
because
also
it's gonna
interesting.
be bad later.
It's also
Mm.
interesting too. This kind of brings up two things, and then maybe we'll get back to Jay, like when you were expecting your second child. But all right, TV as an example, right? I know more Gen X, like not Gen X, baby boomers, I guess, really older people that are like stuck on TV, that kind of spend their whole day watching TV, more than our generation. And even growing up, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, they kept telling TV would rot our brains. It had already rotted theirs, I guess. Like
So
they
they
are
knew.
like
They knew.
addicted to it. So
They knew.
and I also feel like, so then I wonder, in the future, if you grow up with social media, you don't care about it as much. I
We'll see.
think we'll see. And then the other part is a lot of things in humanity, like the baby boomer generation was an anomaly. That's why it's a boom. Booms are, they don't happen all the time. But then that makes us an anomaly too, because we were raised by them in a world of different standards. And we're facing kind of the consequences of that now, of like humanity or America, Western culture, regressing to a historic mean,
Mm.
So I think that's something that when you look at how people grow up, and like the boomers were like, well, you can get a job out of high school and stay at a factory for 40 years. That's not human history. That's not how people lived before that
Right.
period of post 2 world wars, and this boom generation and the technology, everything coming together in factories and things. So what does it mean to regress to a historical mean when we're um, advanced in our
Yeah.
productivity and the things we can do?
Well, I wonder if that happens too, if that kind of cycles through in different like cultures and geographic spaces and things like that too, as industry provides money and an economy and luxury in a way that certain groups haven't had before. And so then you have to kind of work into that, realize like, oh, the whole point of this is actually just to get back to being able to just hang out with my family, like in the grass, and have picnics and stuff that we could have done, before all of this anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. We're just trying to get back to like village living and like little tribes
hunter
and things,
gatherers,
but with a little more comfort and indoor plumbing.
and that's funny because that's what AI. It's like AI is meant to make life easier so we can detach from AI.
Yeah,
So
depends on who has the power over it.
that's, oh gosh, let's not get on that.
Talking about being a parent, who's going to parent AI?
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
So because Tony's thinking about the second kid, and I think you're our first guest with 2 kids. No, Gundy, Tony's cousin, had 2 kids. But yeah, oh no, he was expecting a second kid.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he had it after he had it.
So
after
you are the first guest with 2 current kids
that are both older.
Old pro.
And they're both older. Yeah. So tell us a little bit when you were getting ready for the second child.
Well, the first thing I'll say is, kind of goes back to something Tony was bringing up earlier. Yeah, everything with our daughter, who's our older child, we're still first-time parents.
Right.
And, with our first kid, we did all the typical first parent kind of things that, like, even while you're doing them, you're doing them. There's that commercial where like a mom drops a pacifier on the ground with their first kid and she like sanitizes it and does all this stuff. And, and then on the second kid, it like drops in the dirt. She like puts it in her own mouth to clean it off and then sticks it in the kid's mouth,
Yep.
We definitely went through that process. But with our older child, like we're still, everything that happens with her, we're first time parents still. So it's only with our second kid that we're more of, a second kid kind of parent, which is a little frustrating in that maybe not entirely we're as much that way, but I think we get scared at a lot of things with our daughter that probably don't scare us as much with our son because we've never had a 7-year-old before, but we've had a 3-year-old before. So it's like, he's fine. Like,
it doesn't calm you completely. Like you said, everything is new. All her meltdowns are new. She's like, I don't just want chicken nuggets all the time, whatever.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see where
is a picky eater in some ways, but it's new stuff, Now she has friends too. It's like, you got to make time for them.
Yeah, I can definitely see where these parents who have like 6, 7, 8 kids just lose track of the younger ones. Like, I don't know where they are. They're fine. But it was definitely a really big is a huge time commitment forward with having a second child. I mean, doubling up everything that you're doing. And they weren't so close in age because ours are almost 4 years apart. So thankfully we weren't changing two sets of diapers at the same time.
Mhm.
But then it also means they're a little less likely to be into the same stuff at the same time. So then it's like, they get in fights over toys or the TV or whatever. And again, we're really lucky. Our daughter is honestly just a really, really good big sister.
Mhm.
And so they play together really, really well.
That's great.
And at the risk of my son hearing this podcast someday, I mean, to some extent, it was like we want to have another kid so that our daughter has somebody to play with. Like we want to have a couple of kids who can play with each other. And it's
Mhm.
not just because we were tired of playing, you know, these games that she would make up. Although we did occasionally get tired of those. There was this one where she pretended to be in the ocean and she would jump and she'd like kind of squirm around on the floor and then she'd jump up at us on the couch, but she would roar because she was a lion. And we're like, lions don't
Makes
live in the
sense.
ocean. She's like, this
Well,
one does. It's like,
yeah.
sure, it does. That's fine.
And the confidence
And
that kids have with this imagination. This
right.
lion lives in the ocean because he's
Yeah,
special. Yeah,
it
yeah.
does. And you just have to get on board with that.
Oh yeah.
But like the 30th time that you play that game as a grown up, it just doesn't have quite the same
Sure.
excitement and complexity that it did when it started. Um, and I think there's more to having a second kid than that, but there was
No,
some,
but that's like, yeah, just
you know,
kind of playing it out of what it's like and the benefits of having a second kid. The
yeah.
benefits
We both
and being
had two
able to be
siblings,
buddies.
right? Yeah, we both had two siblings. We actually both had two sisters, um, and I think it's a huge part of our identities, intentionally or not. It changes who you are to grow up with siblings or not, and how many you have and which order you are and all that kind of stuff. I think it all kind of
100%.
affects you a little.
It definitely does. And I always wondered this, and I want to ask someone who has like twins or something, like, does it change? Because you said, you don't want to be changing diapers at the same time, but I'm like, sometimes I wish I did have like twins at the same time,
Yeah.
to get it all done. Like, because now he's 3, we're past the diaper stage. Like, so then we don't have to do it again, because the big thing is, again, I'm
Yeah.
41 now. If we're gonna have another kid, like, now we have to do the diapers again. We have to do the midnight feedings, the 2 a.m. feedings. I'm like, I wish we kind of just had them, closer, because they'll be about 4 years apart too at this point now.
Mhm.
So I've always wanted to ask somebody who has twins, like, do they feel like
Well,
after they got past that stage, it was
Yeah.
better?
yeah. Well, I got a buddy with twins that I'm gonna try to bring on
Yeah,
Mhm.
sometime next month. So we could ask him directly
yeah.
what
Yeah, I'd
his
like to know what
feelings
he
like.
says because originally I was kind of like you, Tony. I wanted two sets of twins. I
Yeah,
wanted a boy girl, and then like 3-ish years later, have another boy girl set, two pregnancies, 4 kids, and
that's
like,
it. Yeah,
you're done.
knock
Yeah.
it out. Yeah, that's funny. And yeah, obviously, I'm sure the wife is probably like, wait, I didn't sign up for this. But
Yeah, she was
for
not a
us, it's
fan of that
like,
idea.
what, like, hey, I mean, if I'm getting bottles for one, I just get a second bottle, and then get them both trained together. They have inherent play friend. So, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, when we're looking at exactly what those kind of the second time around is going to be, a little bit older,
yeah,
a little bit smarter, quote unquote, but it is going to be very interesting to have to go back to day one of day zero, bringing the baby
yeah,
home. But hopefully, you have a little more confidence in regards to, like, I've done this before. Like you said, I know what a 1-year-old does. I know what a 6 month
yeah,
old does. I don't know what my older son's gonna do. It's literally, I don't know what he's doing right now, and it's
yeah,
probably nervous.
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Well, and you'll be surprised how quickly you forget what a 1-year-old does or a
Yeah,
6-month-old does and stuff like that too. There are a lot of times we're like, when did Avea start doing this? When did she start doing that? And we can't remember.
it's like
Yeah.
PTSD. I say, like, parent PTSD. You forget about the tough times because there's always a new tough time. There's always a new tough time.
Yeah. Yeah. The current one is, yeah, the worst because it's the current one.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
until she turns, 15 or 16 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, But yeah,
Well, Jake,
that's
glad to have you on, man. I really appreciate it.
sure.
We'll have to
A
do it again
pleasure.
sometime. Maybe after
Yeah.
the birthday, after the next birthday.
Yeah. I want to hear what this guy with the twins has to say. Does he have another kid who's not part of the twins?
No, the twins were his first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need some comparison contrast study.
We'll do
Yeah,
a forum. Just have like
No,
6
we'll
Yeah,
have
women.
to find. Yeah, we'll have to find somebody with like 6 kids at some point.
I
Five,
know.
six.
yeah.
Bring them on here. So,
Well, yeah,
but
thank you
yeah,
guys. Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for coming on, man. This is a great conversation, and it's good to see the future when it comes to like what to expect. Because I never thought about that with the 7-year-old with kind of the same, cognitive abilities that you think are greater, but you still have to realize that they're not
Yeah,
developed at the point that you think they might be. So that's really
yeah.
good to know.
Cool. All right.
Sure, pleasure, man.